Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of On the Hook, the official podcast of Yellow Pike Media. In this episode, I'm really excited. I know I say that every weekend, but this one is actually really close to my heart and something I'm super into. I'll be talking with Jeremy Cohen, Director of Client Services at Pixis Drones. And we'll be talking all about drone show design and how Jeremy uses his expertise to really create artistry in the sky. Welcome, Jeremy. How are you today?
Thank you. Day's going great. How about yourself?
Very well, very well. I've been looking forward to this since we got it set up last week. So I have to confess that as a very lifelong, RC pilot, moved into drones a few years ago and don't get to fly anywhere near as much as I want to. This is exciting for me because I've been seeing the way drones are going and all of the things that can be done, and it's breathtaking. And now that they've become really an integral part of the experiential of very large brand events, and I assume you're going to tell me even some smaller ones that can utilize some of this technology to make really impressive, long-lasting shows that have serious impact within the space. So why don't we get started with you telling us who you are and how you got here?
Of course. So I did lots of different things before starting this job. Left college not knowing what I wanted to do. I worked in licensing and rights clearance for a little bit. Found that I liked the brand portion of it, but wasn't really feeling exactly the sales portion. But then I went into sales anyway. I went into a sales and outreach job for a medical school tutoring company, and then left that to go into recruiting. Wanted to do something that was a little bit more people focused and less on the sales side. And then still was craving that creative itch that I really couldn't scratch there, and found myself working with a drone light show company. And it was a great way to combine my love of the creative, but also working with brands, working with clients, and having a fantastic team. So it's led me to a pretty wonderful position.
That's a very cool backstory. I'm thinking of myself as I'm listening to this because with my interest in it, and I'm remembering being, I think it was at Disney, and Intel had one of the very early examples of what you could do with sort of slaved drones and a big presentation. I think it was 2 minutes of just little Christmas music, and the drones would go up and they'd make like a Christmas tree or a little snowman, and the crowd was blown away. But that technology has moved so fast in the last handful of years. We've seen it at Super Bowl. We see it I'm sure we'll see it this summer at the Olympics. We see it in more and more places. And it also feels like it's becoming more and more accessible. Maybe if it's not these major, massive, sporting events or massive, multi-million dollar halftime shows or whatever we have. Tell me the process of how we get from a brand comes in and said, hey, we want to do something really different. What does that look like from white sheet of paper for you? How do we get to these incredible shows from, I think I have an idea?
So once a brand reaches out or we're in contact with a brand in some way, we're able to explain exactly what differentiates us, which is that we love telling stories. It's a big portion for us. We can put images in the sky, but it's really the ability to connect with a brand and people. I mean, one of the oldest professions in the world is storytelling and the art of it. So us being able to communicate message, what the brand is looking to convey exactly. Typically, we'll start off once we're locked into a contract, just saying, what is it that you want to accomplish? What's the overarching goal? Is there a story in mind? What are the must-haves that you need to put into the show? What is it that you want? What do you want to stay away from? And for a lot of folks who come to the table, the very first question that we try to ask is, have you ever seen a drone show in person before? And for those that have not, it's a brand new experience. And for those that have, it's building upon something that they usually say, we have, and it's awesome. So being able to walk through what the capabilities are and really build out the story, how everyone wants it to be in such a way that gets people to think, to feel. And of course, at the end of the day, this is often paid for. If it's specifically a brand that's for profit, there's a goal in mind. How do we achieve that goal? And it's a pleasure to be able to work with those brands and those clients to build the best show possible.
So for anyone who hasn't seen a drone show live in person, how would you describe what you do to someone who's never seen it?
I would say it's like seeing Close Encounters of the Third Kind in real life. My first real experience with these drones, I saw one in the distance. Of course, it happened to be a Pixis Drones show, but I was on the ground doing a show in Chicago, and to see all of these drones lift off in waves, in four tiers, just rising. You hear the humming. It sounds like millions of bees buzzing around, and then to see them take shape into these images that, even though I knew what they were going to be, to see these drones, because people might have the perception that these drones are brilliant, and they're not. They're kind of blind lawnmowers flying in the sky, knowing exactly where they need to be, but not knowing where their neighbors need to be, not knowing their neighbors even exist. So being able to see them go into formation and then know exactly where they want to be with path files, I like to call it drone choreography. They play their part, and they're all integral to showing these dynamic images in the sky. So it's even better when paired with music. It really brings out the senses, any sort of narration, whatever it can be, that's an audio factor that pairs with it. So, and it's like the first time you saw fireworks, but we've seen so many fireworks as people that we probably don't even remember the first time that we saw fireworks, but you're going to remember the first time you saw a drone show. And for us to be able to look at fireworks, which I always have a great time seeing them, but you can tell different fireworks, but it feels like you can almost count how many fingers you have, the amount of the types of fireworks you've seen, and even if they're more than that, that's just kind of the perception of it. With drones, there's so much you can accomplish, and the ability to do seemingly anything, especially fireworks, makes it feel just like this brand new experience every single time. I never get tired of seeing drone shows. There's always a new one around the corner. It's even better when I don't know what to expect. So being able to bring that to life and then having the experience of seeing them retreat back to the landing zone, there's nothing quite like it.
I hear what you're saying about when you see a fireworks show. I mean, I find myself watching a fireworks show and I think, oh, that's that one. I really like that type of firework. It's familiarity, right? You've seen it before. I know what that's supposed to look like. And oh yeah, I remember I like that. The handful of drone shows I've seen, exactly right. They're so unique and so different every single time. I I didn't realize what you had said because I'd always in my mind, because this is how I think, this is what I want the future to look like. I've always had this image of drone shows being this very interconnected sort of like matrix of drones that all know where everybody is, and they can autocorrect. But you're saying that's not the case. They're just up there following their individual mapping, really, right?
Mhm.
And this incredible ballet. I'll up your game a little bit from choreography to ballet. Um, is all entirely individual performers, really, just knowing where they're supposed to go and supposed to be, and I guess to humanize it a little bit, trusting in the fact that the other, I don't know, how many drones do you have up there? 100 drones are finding their way.
Yeah, we typically will do plenty of shows in terms of different sizes, but 300 makes for a great show. 500 is fantastic. The one that we did, the Pac-Man show in Brooklyn Bridge Park back in last October, that was 750. So, I mean, it's so fascinating to think of how space is also used, because when you look at your phone, the amount of pixels you have there are in the millions, and often there might be just 500 pixels in the sky making up these images. But there will eventually come a point where the technology advances and the drones maybe don't become sentient, but they certainly have more of an understanding of who they are, what their world is, and being able to tell a story as needed. So but yeah, it's just being able to provide that. It's been a blast.
That is very cool. And you mentioned a show which I've seen online and around, the Pac-Man show.
Mhm.
How did that come about? What was the process of putting that together to finish product?
That was a tie-in with our sister agency, Red Peg. Red Peg Marketing does experiential. And so essentially, we were working with Red Peg and Bandai Namco to announce this new game that Bandai Namco wanted to uh, basically let the world know about during New York Comic Con. And on the experiential side, of course, that's where Red Peg focused their aspects. And for the drones, that's what they were interested in. That's where we came into play. And so it was trying to get the exact version of what they wanted to accomplish. You wanted to have the iconic Pac-Man chomping in the sky, but you also wanted to show what the newer version of Pac-Man was. You wanted to get that 3D rendering of what Pac-Man is, and to be able to have photos and people seeing what a 3D Pac-Man looks like over the water was really great. But being able to lift off with that, there was a custom soundtrack that was made that we paired. We had watch parties on both sides of the East River to view this, and really just feeling as though you're watching this story unfurl in front of you. Um, but being able to work through the creative, work with the clients, everything to get to the point where it's the iconic Pac-Man brand, but it's also launching into the future. And of course, this is the game that everyone is anticipating and why you should be excited by it. And the media attention and the traction for that was great. We did another show for One Piece, Netflix, when they did the
Mhm.
live action version, and they brought 2,000 diehard One Piece fans, and they watched the pilot in Santa Monica Pier. And at the end, when the trailers, when the credits were rolling, it was 10-9-8-7-6 turn around. And then the entire group turns around, and our drones are already in the sky. And then our drones count down 5, 4, 3, 2, One Piece. And then we're able to put all of this imagery that the fans have loved for years in the sky. And there's this one moment where a character puts a straw hat on the other character. It's been all throughout manga and anime and
Yep.
everything that they've done. It was in the show, and people just lost their minds. It was like the winning touchdown of the Super Bowl, or like a big home run. Like the eruption that came from it because of how it connected with those fans was
Sure.
massive. But being able to, with Pac-Man, just working with Bandai Namco team to produce something of a similar ilk, it meant the world to us.
Yeah, especially after seeing the first episode and turning around and seeing this iconic moment, it's almost, we for One Piece, we've seen it in manga, so we've seen it in print. Now we've seen it on the screen, and now it's kind of in the world, right? Because this is, and I don't know if you haven't seen it, if you fully grasp. This is fully 3D. There's depth, there's width, there's a Z-axis at work here, and it just fills the sky. While it sounds cool, how challenging is that to do in real time with the understanding that there are people who are going to be offset to your center? How do you kind of keep it looking really great for everyone, and not just sort of the traditional way where we consume media is straight on, straight ahead, very kind of flattened out. Like here you have a whole sky. How do you kind of make that work in that space without losing that natural 3D effect?
There are always going to be angles that are just a little bit trickier than not. What we try to do though is we work with we have a great logistics team and flight operations team. We'll work with venues to ensure the best viewing spots. We want to obviously make this for the public. Of course, we want the clients to be able to be in the best position to view their experiences as well. So we work closely to try to figure out, okay, is this the best angle? Where do we want it to be? How will it truly resonate? Because a lot of what we have as well is there are influencers who will appear, there are fans who will be able to gain traction from this, and we want them to be in the best position to see the show. But there is a viewing nature. It's hard to have a three-dimensional angle. Our drones and the images that we create are absolutely 3D, but it's kind of like a television in the sky where there's not going to maybe be the curvature TV that goes around. It's kind of where it's positioned and shooting out from there. So we want to be as inclusive from a viewing standpoint as possible, but just based on where people are situated, it can be a little bit trickier to get that exact spot where everyone is perfectly happy to see it. But usually people don't really have much of a fuss. They're just
Sure.
excited to see it there.
Sure. And with the example like you just gave with One Piece, you can kind of, especially to the core audience, the prime audience that you want to have viewing this, you can sort of align them and then have them in a position where, hey, turn around, and they're already in the best viewing angle at that moment. So there's both the aerial choreography and the crowd choreography as well that's involved in making sure everybody's in the right place to get the best effect, capture, the best results for their socials, or make the biggest impact on the audience, and of course please the client, above all else. Experiential is huge right now. Everybody wants something experiential. The traditional influencer marketing tactic of, oh, we're going to get 20 influencers and they're going to do a thing and it'll be great, has become, we want to get like 5 creators and we want them to experience something. This is the nth degree of that. This is an experience that entire, crowds can share it at one time and capture it in their own way. How have you seen the experiential space change as the technology here has changed, as the ability to tell bigger, better stories has changed? And do you see a place where, and I'm going to steal your words, do you see a place where we have television in the sky where we can tell long stories that are closer to like a full, because I understand batteries, drones are limited.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a future where we can pull off, a 2-minute commercial, let's call it, over Manhattan? Is that in the pipe?
Yes, that will in the future. That will happen.
I gotta ask harder questions. That was too easy.
Well, it's battery life will naturally evolve,
Mhm.
and as we get further in time, the amount of drones will probably increase too. So being able to depict television in the sky. I mean, we already have billboards. You can put drones up in the sky and be able to show changing billboards, much in the way that you might see off of the interstate. So to be able to add more pixels and longer battery life, uh, the frames per second, we've already seen a large increase. Um, I believe it's sextupled just in the time that I've been with the company. So the ability to just keep changing imagery and have something that's depicted, especially when you're able to add the audio in, is huge. To go to the first part of your question from the experiential standpoint, I don't believe we've done our job if we are not able to have folks watch our show and walk away feeling transformed, even in a minor way, because our whole goal here is to have people feel and to get them to think a little bit too, but mostly just to feel. And I would say we're always going to be an element of a larger tie-in, right? They're going to be experiences where we're not just, hey, we're doing the drone show. It's the drone show is a part of a larger experience. And typically what happens in the way that we are tied in works to our benefit, where we're all able to play along with the other groups, but it's just something so different that hasn't been seen. So how we're able to just be prominent and yet not too much. We don't want to overshadow, of course, other elements of an experience, but we do recognize that it's not every day that you see a drone show. Uh, the overwhelming majority of people have never seen one in person. So it's only going to become more prevalent as time goes on, and that number, of course, will increase higher. But it is a huge part of that experience, but we want to work with these teams to ensure that we're prominent, but not too much, and able to have
Sure.
everyone shine as a result.
So as I'm listening, I'm hearing you talk about, we've gone from 100 to 500 to 750 and far more in the future.
Mhm.
This isn't a bunch of people on the ground like we're used to seeing it if we see somebody flying a drone in the park with a couple little sticks. This is a very complicated piece of software we're talking about here, right? How
100%.
does how does that come together?
It comes down to having an incredible flight operations team. Our pilots, typically, we will have 2 pilots stationed with all of these drones. Doesn't really matter however many we have, there are usually 2 pilots, and we've got incredible grid managers who get on site and are able to measure out exactly where the grid needs to be. We do adequate testing. Our biggest thing is safety. That's the number one thing. We can deliver a great show, but it doesn't really matter if someone gets hurt. And it behooves the entire industry to fly safe shows. We don't fly over people and we don't fly over open roads. And so using those folks and PAs that we have on staff as well to do the show, they come together and they make the magic happen. I mean, we're able to work with the clients. We've got a programming team. We're able to work on social and marketing and everything. But the show also doesn't fly unless the people on the ground are able to make that happen. So the work they put in to achieve it, and then even when the show is going off, we have people stationed to ensure optimal security and safety. We've got someone on a connectivity panel to make sure that the Wi-Fi network that we create, that the drones are connected to it. And of course, we have our two pilots who control everything to ensure the drones are up, they're running. If anything happens, they are prepared and ready. They study those path files, the drone choreography or ballet, I suppose, to make sure that they're as prepped for this show as possible.
What about, and I understand artistry is more your role than tech. The world is not a perfect place. What sort of eventualities is the team prepared for should a percentage, and I'm sure at this point in the tech, it's a really tiny percentage of the drones don't launch, or they, for whatever reason, have another technical issue, and they do. What's a good way of putting land unexpectedly?
It's part of new technology where mishaps can, of course, occur. And the way that, and this happens with the tech in the future, being able to have these drones be a little bit more self-aware, where there could be in the not too distant future a world where if a drone doesn't take off, there's built-in backups where one of those drones says, I know exactly where I need to be now to cover up anything for a drone that didn't take off, and being able to bridge the gap that way. And we'll get there. But of course, there are times where a drone doesn't take off and you just hope for the best that it wasn't a prominent drone. And the good news is, of course, that using other technology in post, able to do what we need to do to ensure that the client doesn't send something out where someone can look and be like, hey, there's a drone that maybe should have been there and isn't. But we want the viewing experience as well to be as seamless and as perfect as possible. And very often we are able to get the perfect shows. And every now and then it's 99%. And it's frustrating for us as our whole team just happens to be made up of perfectionists, because we believe that's what's deserved of the client and of those watching it. But it's just simply where the tech is now, and there will come a point where it's less of a concern.
Outstanding. How do we? I mean, I see where you're talking about things like we don't fly over people, we don't fly over open roads, safeguards against any of those unintended happenings. There's no one there to be injured or wounded. There's no one at risk as much as humanly possible. So I realize safety is a big deal. But what about just in general? Just the legit. How do you move all this stuff? We're talking hundreds of drones. First off, give us an idea. How large is your average drone?
Average drone,
Circumference-wise.
I'm trying to think of how to describe it exactly. If you're watching, it's about that
About
that
yay
big.
big.
Yeah, it's and they've got the four legs and propellers, and sometimes when moving them, of course, because they're sharp blades, you get what we like to call drone kisses, little scratches on the
Oops.
arms and whatnot. So they go by truck for the most part. When we do an international show, then we transport them. They've got batteries, so there's the lithium component, so it's harder to fly with them, of course.
That was going to be my next question: is mobilizing all of those batteries. That's its own safety and regulatory concern.
Hmm.
And
But
you guys handle all of that, right?
we do. We're a turnkey operation, and we find ways to say, okay, well, this truck is going to be out west, and there's another show happening in the Midwest. So we have to get that truck from here to there because there's another show happening in the Northeast. So we've got another truck that's maybe going from the Southeast to there. So it's all sorts of how do we get this truck full of drones from point A to point B in a timely manner, and we ensure that's the case. We're never in a position where we overcommit in the amount of drones that we have, and then we are unable to deliver. We want to under promise and over deliver. So being able to transport them, we have a driver who is also working the grid as well to set up those drones too. But it's a challenge to be able to get everything across the country, but that's the beauty of what we're trying to do, and eventually having warehouses and drones and various key points for easy access, that would
Mm.
certainly be the most ideal for any company.
Are are you guys currently focused primarily on North America, or do you have the ability for a client in, well, you said Namco Bandai. If they had said, "Can you come here and do this in Tokyo?"
We could. We absolutely could. We focus primarily on North America, but we're looking into opportunities all across the world. Of course, there are some spots that are simply further ahead in terms of the technology space, or perhaps their laws and regulations are more laxed, where from our vantage point, entering those markets would make less sense just because they've already built in where they're at. But for the ones that are incredibly untapped, we would love to explore those opportunities.
Interesting. I'm curious. There are so many moving parts of this. There are so many different aspects to consider, and I know you guys are handling the logistics of all of that. But when a client comes in, when a brand comes in and says, "This is what we're imagining," do you ever have the moment where you go, "Oh boy, how are we going to do this with this technology?" And given the benefits that are growing every day, but some of the limitations. Have you ever had to have that conversation? It's like, we can get you this, which will give the same feel, but we're not quite there yet on some of these other pieces. What do those conversations look like? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of education in your job.
Yes, I've absolutely had those conversations. The for folks who just don't have extensive experience with drone shows, which is completely normal, or those who even have, but perhaps they're not as familiar with the capabilities, there are times where a commercial or other types of animation are envisioned, and let's just do that in drone form. And it goes back to the pixels conversation of millions versus a
Right.
hundred, a few hundred, 1,000, and trying to set expectations there. So we don't want to say no to these opportunities, and we don't want to say no to the client as well. But what I always say is, it is my goal to ensure that your brand is conveyed the best way possible. So I will do everything to communicate, this would look a lot better like this because of X, Y, and Z. Or this is something that would be trickier to do. Might I suggest this instead? And we're fortunate to have so many agreeable clients that we get to where we need to go. Or there are times, of course, where the client will want something that feels like those images, and we try to massage it and have it feel more like a story because it's just able to communicate it as such. And at the end of the day, we want to do right by the client. If the client says we're steadfast on doing this, we can certainly make our recommendation, but we will adhere to what it is that the client needs. We're agreeable. But we also are the experts in this field. We've had extensive experience, and the ability for us to work with this technology as it's continuously evolving and taking things and just broadening it out in such a way that it fulfills the potential of the drone show. Uh, when you're paying thousands upon thousands of dollars for a drone show, we want to put it in the best position. And our recommendations, we want to make the best story. And candidly, the shows that we do, those are marketing. It's marketing for us. Being able to say to other people, this is the work that we're doing, is huge in addition. But again, our primary focus, making sure that the client, what they want communicated, is done right.
Do some of these requests help you guys push the envelope a little bit? Like you go back to your team and say, they're trying to do this. I don't know how we do that. Is it something we can work on for the next client, for the next brand, for the next show? This has to be an entire industry that's just constantly evolving at really crazy rates because of conversations like that, I would imagine.
Yes, the best clients that we've worked with, I would say, are those that just say, yes, go forth. We trust you. Go ahead. One example, you're talking about pushing the boundaries. So we worked with Cosmix. Cosmix is uh, a company that under the McDonald's umbrella, and it basically there was the Bolingbrook version in Chicago, outside of Chicago, kind of the test store, and now they're finally revealing more stores that are coming. It's a rival to the soft drink world, Starbucks to Sonic, and it stems from a 1980s character of McDonald's world and lore, Cosmic, that disappeared and now is finally back with these really awesome drinks and foods aimed at a more Gen Z crowd. And Cosmix wanted to do a drone show, so they came to us and they said, we really want to do something that's abstract, that's sort of mystifying, that gets the word out, that gets people saying, "What did I just see?" and then tying it back to the surprise element. So when we were storyboarding, we thought, great, we could do that Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They wanted to do this show in Dallas. That's where the first location opened up. So I've been to Marfa, Texas, where they're the Marfa lights, and they're these mystifying alien-like things that no one really knows about how they come to pass and what they are, but they're very cool to see. So what we eventually got to was leaning into the abstract show. If we're trying to build up brand perception and get the word out, we took these images that they had that were twinkling lights, shooting stars, but then we broadened it out. We had the drones form essentially a black hole, and from the black hole, we started to pull pieces of the logo. It was a 2D version of the logo. And so you get the bottom part, and then you get the antennae, and then you get the sides, you get everything until you suddenly realize that this logo has materialized. And then the logo goes away and it becomes the 3D version of the logo. And this was something we've never had the opportunity to do before because this was a client that just said, yes, we're eager, we want to do it. And it was a lot of communication and a lot of brainstorming, and it just got to a point where we got to use this show, not just, hey, let's put this in our back pocket and use another time, but in real time develop it and turn it into something that just felt mystifying in such a great way. And that was a wonderful experience for us. But there are things in mind, of course, where you can take a wall of drones, and because it takes a longer time for the drones to form, say, a 3D or even 2D image, if you put them all together and have a wall and have colors, just the lights changing because of how fast it can go, you can make things appear far faster in a 2D setting than you would have if you had done it in another image. So that's something that we're eager to show in other ways too. But it does. A client comes up with an idea and that sparks something. We either do it then or we say, that's a great thing for us to use later, to your point. And it's a lot of fun to be able to actually show.
So you're saying, in a sense, if I understand this correctly, you can actually, to a degree, build sort of like an LED panel in the sky, and because of the technology and the speed at which it can change light colors, have this same effect as if you were watching an LED panel.
Exactly. And that goes to the television in the sky. The ability to put all those pixels together in such a way where the movement is rapid and it's one easy sequence, and you can change those colors as quickly as possible.
That's impressive. Now I understand your comment earlier about frame rates, because you are basically matching frame rates on a TV in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive. So as we've been listening to all this, and as the audience has been listening, in the back of my head, it occurs to me that there are people probably like me that's like, I'm pretty good with the computer. I can do this. What do I need? These aren't your, I'm going to run to Best Buy and get, a couple of DJI drones and throw a show in the air, right? This is very custom, very specific, built to purpose tech, correct?
That's correct. These drones, they've got lights at the bottom of them. They hover, they don't turn over at any point. They just they can zigzag, they move, but they always stay pretty level. And if you're thinking about going out and getting one, to your point, number one, they're custom made. Number two, it's not just flying one or a handful of them, it's flying upwards of hundreds. And it's hard to secure the right level of paperwork that's needed in order to fly all of these IFOs.
This was going to be my follow up. It's like, um, when you put these together, your clients come in knowing we have the right tech, we have the right tools, we have the right people, we have the right everything, the creative, and we also have the ability to make this perfectly legal, because there has been in the last 5 years an awful lot of discussion about where you can put these things, how you can put them, what's required, the laws. Um, you need pilot's license now, effectively, for a lot of this, and you guys cover everything. So there's zero need for a client to do anything other than, here's my vision, help me get it in front of my customers.
Exactly. Outside of site fees and certain, it can fluctuate. If you want to be on Vegas Strip for F1, you're looking at pretty expensive fees that
That's
we're
all the
unable to
money
help.
right there.
Right. But then there are some spaces where the site fees are zero, but we help connect. We're in touch with the landowners to secure that, and it's that the how you want to capture social content is often the largest portion. Fan experience is big, but being able to capture the show and use that in marketing purposes for advertising, whatever it would be, that's a key component that's not usually covered. But we, of course, work to secure the people to record those shows, and then we edit them and we deliver them on a timely basis so that whatever it is needs to be distributed and produced is done within that time frame.
And I think that's always one of the pieces that I'm interested in, that it feels oftentimes like it comes in at the end of putting together an experiential. It's like, great for everyone who was there, but how do we get it out? So the fact that you guys will help package that and put it together, and cut it down and recreate that sense of awe in an online setting, or just in whatever their television broadcast or commercial ends up being. I think that's oftentimes an experiential, a lot of what people miss. It's done for the moment, or if it happens to be a televised event like the Super Bowl halftime, it gets captured because, well, cameras were there anyways. It's a key component. How do you guys plan for that piece? Is it just we go in assuming that's happening, and we make sure that in the design process we're building it to be captured like this, or is there some other ballet and artistry that you can't divulge behind all of this?
Well, no, when we from the jump try to understand exactly what it is that the client will need, and oftentimes it is, we want this film for posterity, we want to be able to debut something. This is very important to us, and it benefits us as well because we're able to share the content that we create on our own platform, which then is able to further conversations and views, and the ability for people who maybe are halfway across the country but want to see a drone show. Uh, they get that opportunity. It's on a screen and it's faster. The other thing with drone shows that I should mention is it's really slower than you think. It's fast, but in the world of infinite scrolls and TikToks and quick
Right.
videos, it takes longer. And so the instant gratification that we have as society is just a little bit lesser. But it's the sort of thing where you're captivated. You're not going to want to just go on your phone. You're intrigued by what happens next. And that's the great thing. It's one of those performances that really captivates you in a way that other things, maybe you'd say, oh, that's cool. Like, I was at a baseball game yesterday. I had a blast. There are people on their phones. It's just different in terms of how it's captured, but it's very important to us to be able to record these shows. And also we put so much time and effort and love into them that we want the ability to be able to say, this
Sure.
is the work we were able to provide, and we're so proud of it. And this was a great brand. So Here you are, world. Tell us what you think.
Something you mentioned, and I think I was hearing it a little differently, but it occurs to me that as much as this isn't a quick hit thing when you're viewing it, when you're experiencing it, when you're there, this must require significant lead time. So I'm thinking about the brand manager that's out there right now going, well, I'm going to have to call Pixis because this sounds incredible. And I have an idea for next month.
Mhm.
I'm sure your guys can put together something amazing in a timeline that will just shock me. But this isn't something it's like, this weekend coming up, I would really like it if. It's not that kind of a project. We're talking real lead times here, aren't we?
We are. I would say if someone were to approach us and say, we've got something this weekend, we'd love to do it. We would say that's just simply not enough time. If someone came to us and said, we've got something next weekend, what can you do? There's a chance that we could be able to pull it off. We did a show for the World Athletics Relays in the Bahamas. And that whole process started on a Friday. And then the following Sunday, the show went up. And I mean, does that push the limits of what we can do? It does. Of course, we've got other shows going on in a time manner that we need. Usually, an ideal world, there's about a month and a half because it gives us time to flush out creative, let things marinate, really go through the process in the way that it should be presented. But with that said, everyone's on different timelines. We want to be able to work with brands, and we're great on being able to do it on a quick turnaround. So more time's always great, but we can operate in a short window. It's just it's trickier, but there's the adrenaline rush, of course. My
Sure.
boss usually says when he says, "Hey, I've got a show coming up in a week and a half. It's a big show. You're going to kill me." And I say, "Don't worry, I'll kill you after the show." And we get along
I
just
need
fine.
you
Yeah,
now.
right.
We'll
It's
kill
like
you. Yeah. Okay.
emotions aside, let's get this done. We've got a great show to work on, and then usually it doesn't matter at all because we've had this successful show and we're all happy about it, and it works out that way. But we can absolutely work on tight timelines. The issue is really more the logistics of it. From the creative side, we can do it, but it's, can we get the drones from here to there? What hurdles do we have in terms of clearance with the FAA, with the site approval, with anything that might be a factor? Those are the limiting factors. If it were just how can we build the creative side, we can do that in a week. That's not a problem. It's the other factors out of our control that we try to make within our control and change them as best we can.
Which honestly, when you say that, it makes the timeline you gave even more impressive because if you're dealing with the government in any way, shape, or form, and you're turning it around in 10 to 14 days, that's its own small miracles. But like all creative, more time and more money is always deeply appreciated, I'm
Of
sure.
course.
Excellent. Jeremy, this has been an excellent conversation. I've really learned a lot. There are pieces of the process that, as a fan of this type of tech and of this kind of experiential, I was really interested to hear. How do we get in touch with you when YPM says, or anyone listening says, you know what, we need to call Jeremy? What's the best way to reach out to Pixis and say, hey, we have an idea. Please kill us after the show, not now.
Would never kill the client. No, it's all internal. I would say if you're interested in learning more about what we do, or if you know someone who is interested in doing a drone show, you can contact me at jcohen, JCOHEN, at pixisdrones.com, pixisdrones.com. More than happy to talk through capabilities, answer further questions, give insight as to how we could best put your brand forward. And we do other things than just work with brands. Yes, our very first show was the wedding of a U.S. senator's child, and the second show that we did was the Super Bowl. So clearly, we're able to work with a lot of different people. We've worked with municipalities, all across the board, universities, whatever it would be. So we're always excited to bring something to life, and we certainly hope it would be your brand.
That's very insightful because prior to this, I was thinking like, well, the sports people are doing their thing and the brand people are doing their. Never really kind of put it all together holistically. Can you tell us which Super Bowl you guys did?
It was the one in Los Angeles. We
Ah,
flew from right near Crypto.
very cool. Very cool. So you get to hang with Dre, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Back in the green
We
room.
go way back. Yeah.
Jeremy, thank you. I have one last question for you. What's next? What's the next big thing that we should be looking out for from Pixis?
It's a great question. At the risk of saying too much, we've got some really marquee brands that we're excited to work with. There will be a show coming up that features quite a few of them that we're really excited. And um, we're looking to keep pushing the envelope as best we can, certainly in terms of the number of drones that we have. So this will be a big year for us. We're looking to do more than we have before, more shows, and the quality will only get better with them as well. So lots to look forward to on our side. Nice 4th of July shows. Another big thing I should mention, of course, is given where we are at from a fireworks standpoint, especially in the Southwest, 4th of July is not going to look the same. And we're going to be working with some really incredible towns, one of which, for example, Gallup, New Mexico. They are doing multiple shows across multiple 4th of Julys where we are doing drone shows instead of fireworks. Or they're doing drone shows instead of fireworks. It's the most patriotic town in America that they were voted as such. So for them to be able to make the transition from something as all American, of course, as fireworks to the drone world, it's a new era, and the times are changing, and climate change is certainly making that a factor. So we're really looking forward to doing shows. Some of that we're doing in Amarillo that honor these towns, honor 4th of July in the United States, and keep pushing that way. So we're really excited to keep building that too.
That is a really great place to end on. I think when we were talking about safety of using drones, I will willingly admit it never occurred to me that drones can actually be a safer alternative than, for a number of reasons than a traditional fireworks display. Fire risks, injury risks, I would imagine dramatically reduced with drones, just as a matter of course of it being a safer technology than, let's be honest, things that go boom. That's inherently a risk.
Same for folks who are neurodivergent or suffer from PTSD, the lack of sound. That's a cool show that we did. And Stella and Chewy's, we invited a bunch of dog owners, pinged about 36 hours saying, hey, come to Santa Monica Pier. Would love for the opportunity to bring your pets. And then we did a silent drone show. And 4th of July is one of the worst. It's probably the worst day for dogs and other folks who are just not able to stand the noise. So we're going to see a lot more of that as the years go on.
That is incredible. Yet again, other ways that technology just kind of makes everything better for everyone, right? It's there's always a group that can be served by a new technology in ways I don't think the average person sometimes thinks of. And I really appreciate you pointing those things out, especially where it concerns, the neurodivergent population and the pet population. Which, we all love our pets. We hate 4th of July with them under the bed and having to put the thunder blanket on them and trying to calm them. So thank you for reminding us of those benefits to this kind of tech as well. I really appreciate talking to you, Jeremy. This has been so much fun and so interesting. I could probably do another 5 hours with you just hanging out and talking about it. Unfortunately, not everybody is going to sit through that. I would, but I do appreciate everyone listening to this podcast. Again, we'll put all your contact information up in the show notes, Jeremy. So anyone who wants to reach out to Pixis or Jeremy and learn more, about the tech, about how to get working with Pixis and bring your own experiential event to life, please feel free. Jeremy, thank you. Have a great rest of your week and really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.